UFC rules favor strikers over grapplers. You heard me right. Hey, I'm Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Let's discuss the unified rules of mixed martial arts. Back in the year 2000, a boxing commission, yes, a boxing commission, the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board wrote the UFC rules. You heard me right. A boxing commission wrote the UFC rules. Almost every rule that exists in the UFC today is a boxing tradition. The gloves, the rounds, the fouls, etc., all imported directly from boxing. Why? Because a group of boxing commissioners decided on the rules. They looked at the original iteration of the UFC, which was no rules except for no eye gouging and no biting, and even then the fights would continue. You wouldn't get fouled, you would simply be fined a small portion of your purse. The fight would continue. No weight classes, no gloves. The winner was decided by one of two things, knockout or submission, and that was it. They didn't like this. Senator John McCain, back in the early 1990s, saw the UFC, I suppose, and he decided this is the worst thing ever. This is the devil. This is human cockfighting. We need to fight this. It's going to corrupt the youth and destroy the future of America. We can't have this. So he set out on a crusade to end it, and he almost did. And because of the compromise between the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board, a boxing commission, and the folks that own the UFC, they decided, okay, we will make some changes for the sake of security theater so that people will feel better about themselves watching this. Gloves, for example. Bringing gloves into a no-glove sport. It gives the illusion of safety. Gloves really are security theater, not just in MMA, but in boxing. They protect the hands. I shouldn't even say they protect the hands. They allow fighters to throw punches extra hard to a super physiological level without injuring their hands to the extent that they would. In other words, you can punch much harder and much more recklessly with gloves on than you can without. This favors strikers to an extreme degree. The round structure directly from boxing. Originally, the UFC had no rounds and no time limits. And a lot of the fights were kind of boring, understandably so. So, rounds, man, so many boxing traditions, including rounds, originated for stupid reasons. Stupid reasons that came from a good intention. And the intention was to give fighters a rest, give them a break, so that they would be able to perform better, I guess. Because 200 years ago they thought that was safer. The reality is it lets a fight continue to an unnatural degree, and the fighters will sustain more damage than they would have otherwise if the fight ended properly. How does this benefit a striker? Well, think about it. The UFC, in a non-title fight, has 3 5-minute rounds. In a title fight, 5 5-minute rounds. It takes an average of 2 minutes to get to the fight to the ground. Okay? And on average, the downed fighter will get up at least once during the round. Meaning that on average, a wrestler whose game plan is to take the fight to the ground and to finish it on the ground has 1 minute to finish that fight on the ground. Statistically speaking, how often does that happen? Not very often. Meaning, once the wrestler gets his opponent to the ground, he has 1 minute to finish that fight before the round expires and his opponent gets a free reset. Back on his feet. For no other reason than an arbitrary time limit. And then it starts all over again. And the wrestler has to burn all that time on the clock once again to get that striker on the floor once again and do his work and attempt to finish the fight. Submission fighting was a lot more effective in the original UFC where there were no time limits. The 12-6 elbow, this is not so much a rule that benefits anyone, it's just a strange rule. And there are a lot of rumors about it which are patently false, but they're they've got a kernel of truth to them. The popular story is that the folks on the New Jersey Athletic Control Board saw an ice-breaking demonstration with a 12-6 elbow from a karate guy, and they were like, oh, if you can break a stack of ice or bricks or something like that with an elbow, then it's certainly not safe for a human skull. That's not actually true. They saw a fight from the early UFC. I believe it was Remco Pardul versus Orlando Wheat from UFC 2. Remco was like twice the size of Orlando, big traditional jiu-jitsu guy, got on top of the smaller Muay Thai fighter and dropped some elbows on his face until he was knocked out, 12-6 style. I believe it was this fight, it might have been another one, but still of that era and a similar position, where one fighter was dropping undefended blows on the other fighter until he was unconscious in the 12-6 elbow fashion. And a doctor who belonged to this committee said, I cannot sign off on a sport that allows elbows like that. That doesn't look safe to me. None of it's safe. None of it's safe. No strikes to the head are safe. Strikes to the head with a fist, not safe. Strikes to the fist with a round elbow, not safe. Strikes to the head with a downed elbow, up 12-6 elbow, not safe. Kicks to the head, knees to the head, none of it's safe, man. It's silly to think so. This is what we call security theater. If you don't know what that means, it's basically putting on a little show for the public to make them feel safe. Like, oh, look, we're all wearing a mask in this outdoor area where nobody can possibly breathe on each other anyway. Don't we feel so safe now? Meh. Security theater. There's a lot of that going on in the world. But it makes people feel safe, more so the viewers than the fighters. Isn't that strange that these athletic commissions are more concerned about how safe the viewers feel than how safe the fighters actually are? Strange indeed, if I do say so myself. I've heard countless people on the internet say, if only the UFC would allow a 12-6 elbow, then I would stop any grappler with a 12-6 elbow not knowing how to grapple at all, because I think grappling is icky, and all kinds of homophobic feelings about grappling that they express. Ew. Men touching each other. Ew. Striking is touching each other too, guys. Didn't you know that? Reach out and touch someone with your fist. If you can stop a takedown with a 12-6 elbow, it's not a good takedown. Why? How many demos have I seen, just really, really bad grappling demos, where a guy hunches over, breaks his own posture, and then hugs the other dude's legs, and then the McDojo instructor is like, when the other guy shoots in for a double leg take... That's not a double leg takedown. That's crappling. Crap plus grappling. A double leg takedown is not break your own posture and hand the other guy your head and your back on a silver platter. No. No. If the other guy isn't unbalanced, it's not a good takedown. If your posture is broken, it's not a good takedown. If he has the ability to stand there on his flat feet and respond to you in any meaningful way at all, it's not even a takedown attempt. It's nothing. I should put up some visuals on the screen so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, let's do that. Here's crappling. Notice the broken posture. Notice the bowed back. Notice the other guy not unbalanced at all. Notice no impact whatsoever. Notice no real attempt to bring him to the floor. And look at a good takedown. Good posture. Impact step. Unbalanced. He's off his feet. He has no time or ability to respond. If he's trying a 12-6 elbow, he's doing it on the way down, at which point it's no longer a 12-6 elbow, because if you're on your side like this, it's not a 12-6 elbow. Did you know that? If there's any other angle of trajectory other than directly up to directly down, it's no longer a 12-6 elbow, and it's perfectly legal. It's such a dumb rule, though. I wish they would change that. It's perfectly legal in Muay Thai. We see it in Muay Thai. Saw a great knockout in ONE FC Muay Thai. They host both MMA and Muay Thai fights. And for some reason, they banned the 12-6 elbow in the MMA fights. But then Muay Thai fights, boom! This beautiful knockout via the 12-6 elbow from standing. Not as a counter to a takedown, because that doesn't even happen in Muay Thai. But just straight from standing, it's a great technique. Bring it back in, if for nothing else, to shut up all those nerds on the internet who don't know how to fight and get those folks educated. So, the rules, the unified rules of mixed martial arts favor strikers, not grapplers. Why? Because they were written by a boxing commission. Boxing rules really have no place in the sport of mixed martial arts, and yet, they've been here for the last 22 years. And as far as I can tell, we're not getting rid of them anytime soon. Why? Because now it's become a tradition. Boxing has a lot of traditions which are dumb. They were based on good intentions from people who did not understand the science behind what they were doing. Take, for example, the 8 count. After a boxer is knocked down, his opponent retreats to a neutral corner, and the referee will have him stand up. He will look at his eyes, hold the gloves to see if he is cognizant and responding correctly, and he will count to 8. And if the fighter is able to continue, he will continue. Why does that tradition exist in boxing? Well, one specific fight, the first time Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney fought each other, at the behest of Jack Dempsey. Why? Because these two were friends. They were close friends. And they were also professional rivals, but they were good friends. And Jack Dempsey, he was a knockout artist, and back in his day, that rule didn't exist. Prior to this fight between Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney, boxers could stand directly over the knocked down fighter, directly over the down fighter. They did not have to retreat to the standing, back to a neutral corner. They could stand over the other guy like a vulture until their opponent stood up and put 2 feet on the floor, boom, and then you could knock him down again, even before he was ready, even before he could get his bearings. But again, Jack Dempsey, out of professional respect to his friend, decided, you know what, I don't want to do that to my friend. So we're going to have a rule. If there's a knockdown, we'll retreat to a neutral corner, have the ref check on the other guy, give him a few seconds, and then we'll continue. It was a well-intentioned rule. Again, friend to a friend type of rule. But what's wrong with it? What's wrong with that is that it allows a boxing match to continue to an unnatural degree, and the fighters to take an unnatural degree of damage. If you get knocked down, you can be concussed, and a referee may not see that. You can't see a concussion. He doesn't have Superman's X-ray vision. Let me look at your brain. Yes, there's a concussion right there in the brain. He's just looking to see if he responds to some verbal cues, to see if he can look straight, to see if his pupils are widely dilated, and none of that, man, is a 100% tell. So a fighter can get knocked down and concussed multiple times in a boxing match. And because of this rule, I believe a number of boxers have died because they were able to continue, they were allowed to continue when they really should not have been. So boxing traditions, even though so many of them are well-intentioned, the gloves, for example, the rules governing knockdowns, the 8 count, and so on, bad ideas. And we allowed a boxing commission to bring these bad ideas into the sport of mixed martial arts. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.